So let's talk about the eclipse coming our way on Monday, April 8th. So you may know this is a solar eclipse, and that solar eclipses occur at new moons. And the new moon is a time when, at least from our vantage point here on Earth, the sun and the moon are together in the sky. And usually this is a time when we don't see the moon. Although this time, of course, in places in the Earth where the eclipse is visible, we will see the moon. Not as we usually see it, illuminated at the full moon, but as this shadowy black orb that passes between the Earth and the sun, sending the Earth into the blackness of the twinkling night sky in the middle of the day, which can be, as you might imagine, arresting. The sun is the source of all life here on Earth, and to feel, to experience, to see that light being cut off at an unexpected time, it can be really unsettling. So it's no wonder that eclipses have been viewed with tremendous fear and trepidation over thousands of years. And it is true that eclipses mark periods of tremendous shifts in power, and that in that darkness, things get fundamentally rearranged. And that can be unnerving, just as it can be unnerving when in the middle of a sunny afternoon, suddenly it feels like nighttime. The way that I like to think about this from a higher perspective is it's a reminder. It's a reminder that we are not just citizens of this earth or citizens of this solar system, that we are citizens of this galaxy, of this universe. That even when the sun is obscured from the sky, there are thousands, millions, billions of other points of light up there above us. So for me, it is that deep remembering of the infinite possibilities that exist in the world around us. And again, I acknowledge how unsettling and uncomfortable that can leave us feeling. The sun is, in many ways, linked with our sense of our identity, of our purpose. And when that sun is obscured, it is almost like we can forget who we are and why we're here. And that's why I think about this invitation to look to something bigger, to look beyond, to welcome other possibilities, to welcome other ways of being. And for me, so much of working with eclipse energy is about releasing resistance. If we're not holding on, then we can be moved much more smoothly from one place to another. If we're trying to resist, then we will very likely be dragged kicking and screaming towards our destiny. And I always believe that the changes that we experience are for our highest good. However, the feelings and thoughts that go along with those changes are very much within our own purview. So if we're able to surrender some of that resistance and we're able to approach this eclipse without expectations about what will happen or what will move, to do so with an openness and a sense of trust in the experience, I know that that will always serve us. So let's get more specific. So this solar eclipse, again, it's a new moon energy, and new moons are points of inception. It is beginning energy, and it's very internally focused. Again, that time when the moon isn't visible, or at least visible as a light body in our sky. So that means it's very much existing within us. So new moons are times of tremendous possibility. And solar eclipses are like supercharged new moons. This one especially, it's a total solar eclipse, which certainly is of greater magnitude or amplitude. So it's a big one. We're also seeing this eclipse come to us from the sign of Aries, and it is sitting with the north node of the moon. There's two polarities of eclipses, and the north node polarity is one that feels like it's drawing us into something, It's magnetizing the future, the idea of what comes next, that sense of what we are becoming, what we are truly being drawn towards. This Aries energy, it's one that is fiercely independent, it's entrepreneurial, it's honest, it's assertive. So when I think about a new moon north node solar eclipse in Aries, this really does have perhaps the strongest footprint of any eclipse that I can imagine. That real sense for having a new idea of your presence, of who you are here on the earth, for asserting that with honesty and without apology. And I think we'll see a lot of that coming out into the forefront. Aries, of course, can also have, on its lower vibrations, a brash or combative quality. And when I think about working with Aries energy and its ruling planet Mars, I really think about taking that standpoint of what do you stand for? Not what do you stand against or what do you fight against, but what do you stand for? And it can be powerful to take a warrior stance, but we take that warrior stance to show our confidence, to show our strength, to embody that boldness. We don't take it because we want to take other people down. So we might see some of that brashness coming out. We might be confronted with some of that brutal honesty in our lives. And how do we take that into our own selves just to remind us what we really stand for, what we're really about? It's also really struck that this eclipse happens within a minute. So a tiny, tiny portion of the zodiac, very much in the heart of Chiron. And I don't often talk about Chiron. Chiron is a planetoid, and it's a body that has the archetype of the wounded healer. And seeing it so present with this eclipse energy, it's going to have an unmistakable impact. When I think about the wounded healer, this sense of maybe we always have something inside of us that feels incomplete. And maybe it is this sense of incompletion that drives us to find more of who we are. And maybe it's also this experience of pain or suffering that we have had in our lives that drives us to be of service to others we see in that state of pain or suffering. So I like to reframe that idea of what a wound is, and maybe to embrace it as this knowledge that there's always more of us to find, there's always more of us to discover, and that we can feel whole at the same time as we can recognize that we continue to expand and grow. And as we do so, we welcome more and more and more of ourselves. And also finding that deep sense of compassion that becomes available when we appreciate our own journeys, how we have grown, how we have become more of ourselves, and how sometimes perhaps that has happened through circumstances of pain and suffering. And while we don't need to choose that, and that can perhaps be maybe the lower vibration of working with Chiron, when we feel like we need to enter into suffering or pain with someone else, that never helps. We don't need to choose that. We don't need to add more suffering. But what we can add is compassion. What we can add is love. What we can do is share our own stories. And we can offer people tools to become more of who they are. And perhaps to look more towards the future, to look to that expanded vision. And maybe as we do that, as we imagine what more of us could be there when we move into the future and boldly and bravely assert who we are, maybe we don't have to be so focused on the past and where we have been. So I'll be interested to see how this takes shape. And certainly in our own lives, it is a time to really awaken your own healer, awaken that archetype that lives within you. be of service to yourself and to be of service to the world. I also noticed that the symbol for the degree where this eclipse is happening, 19 degrees of Aries, it's a young person feeding birds in the winter. And this has such a wonderful feeling of providing safety, security, and nourishment to those who are unable to find the perspective they need in order to move forwards. And safety allows for that connection. It allows for that gentle nourishment. So this really is a time to be non-judgmental, to welcome all who are ready. And with that Chiron present, and Chiron in Aries is often associated with this wound around the I am presence, your very right to exist, your worthiness to be here. For all of us, there is that invitation to recognize the parts of us that don't feel worthy, that don't feel safe, and to invite them into the fold, to know that all of you is welcome here in our universe, that our whole universe is reflected in you. And also to recognize that in others, to recognize that everyone who is here has the right to be here, to help them to feel safe in that right, not to challenge that. If we challenge that, we just invite that energy of war and combat, that brashness, that harshness that Aries can also deliver. And so the image that came to me as I connected with this eclipse is what you see behind me. It was this raging blue river flowing through this red, parched land. As you can see, the land is even erupting out, almost like it's erupting out. Both, it feels to me like it's erupting out in this beautiful surge, this sense of this is who I am and this is what I have to show to the world, that wonderful sense of Aries. Or from another perspective, it might even be erupting out in anger. That's another thing that I associate with anger is those, with Aries, is those clear expressions of anger. And anger can be a wonderfully creative force. It can move mountains. So how do we find that balance? How do we allow for things to creatively assert themselves and to, it's that sense of like putting ripples out into the universe around us that aren't desired to confront, but rather to announce our presence? I also really thought as I connected with this image about what it's like to be that river. In particular, I thought about this as we have the ruler of this eclipse, the ruler of Aries, Mars, sitting in Pisces. And it's sitting in Pisces right next to the planet Saturn. And Mars and Saturn coming together, it can offer this wonderful sense of structured flowing energy. The grit and determination and time that it takes, like you might imagine with a river. If the river wants to rage, it has to dig a deep enough channel to erode that slowly over time so that it has the energy it can move forth and through. And then that river can continue to branch out and to irrigate this wonderfully parched land. So I had that real sense of what's possible when we choose to be the river, when we choose to dig that channel for our energy to flow, for us to irrigate the lands that appear to be divided around us with this wonderful, life-giving compassion, this universal awareness, this sense of deep spiritual connection that we can find present in Pisces. I also want to acknowledge that Mars and Saturn coming together can also feel like a challenging combination because it is one that demands commitment, discipline, hard work, and it can be a place where we find the limits, where we feel like we're banging our heads against a wall. We feel like we're driving with the brake pedal and the gas pedal on at the same time, and we're skidding out of control, and we don't have this clear sense of direction or the ability to move forward at the pace at which we want to. And it's true that Aries can be a place of impatience, and that with this configuration, I don't expect for things to move quickly, even with that eclipse energy, bringing sudden things in our way and moving other things out of our way. It still has this sense of dogged determination is required, that there is a long-term game here. And it feels like there is an opportunity to heal some of those deep divisions that feel present, especially in America, my own home country, where this eclipse is visible. To heal them by irrigating them with compassion and by knowing what we stand for, by welcoming into the safe, non-judgmental space of our own compassion, our own integrity, our own honesty, all who are willing to be there. And also recognizing where you would just be beating your head against a wall. If there are those who aren't able to see or connect with your vision of the truth, and where continuing to engage would be an exercise in frustration and futility, that's not something that you have to do. So it's a matter of discernment. I always think being there with an open heart, knowing that all are welcome who wish to connect. And if someone doesn't, it's not your duty to go out and to convert them. So I hope that this helps you to integrate, to understand this Aries eclipse energy. I send you so much love for the you now and for the you that awaits on the other side. All my love.